Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Jackson and I will be reviewing the solution for the Nimble Gnome 2 challenge. So the on your own portion of this challenge requires creating 3 new line items on the final page on calculating the cost, additional costs, as well as how many, of adding manager gnomes to the project. In step 21, it details the rules for when we would have a manager gnome, which is that if we have 5 or more workers, we have to have at least 1 manager gnome. And for every 5 worker gnomes above that, we need another manager gnome. And they cost $3,000 each. So personally, when I looked at the on your own portion of this challenge, the first thing I decided to do was go ahead and put this framework in of the HTML page because that seemed the easiest and most straightforward. So I just copied what had been given to us before. I wrote in plain HTML the same things as it says on the example. For each one, I created a span, and I tried to use really clear and obvious IDs because I knew I'd be using them later, so I'd need to remember them and type them correctly. And just as before, after each one, I did a line break. Once I created the framework, I knew I needed to get down to the calculations. So I went after our previous work and I created 2 new variables. I started the 2 variables with a default value of 0 because I figured rather than assume there will be at least 5 gnomes, I would assume there wouldn't be. So the page will automatically, when loading to this point, say that there are no manager gnomes needed and therefore they don't cost anything. Then it will check how many gnomes we have. If it's greater than or equal to 5, it will go through with the calculation. You have to do something like this if your page is set up similarly to mine, because when the page gets to here, it needs to have a value for those variables or else it will error out or you'll get weird results. So I said if the gnomes are greater than or equal to 5, then the number of manager gnomes needed is equal to math.floor gnomes needed divided by 5. We use math.floor here because we only need another manager gnome if there's a whole nother 5 gnomes. If we have 13 gnomes, for example, we only need 2 manager gnomes. Math.floor will take the lowest integer, the lowest whole number. Then, once we have the number of manager gnomes we need, we get the quote by taking that number and multiplying it by 3,000. If you want to make sure that these are working before getting into the HTML of the page, feel free to use console.log to print it out in the Chrome developer tools. Once we've done the calculation, all we need to do is insert it into the HTML of the page. So, this is very similar to how it was done before in class. But I use the IDs that I created, which may be different than yours, so make sure you double check. But the quantity of gnome managers, cost of gnome managers, and total cost were my IDs in those earlier spans. Then we do .html and refer to the JavaScript variable. So I use the same variable I use right here. For cost of gnome managers, I start with a $sign in single quotes, so the browser will understand that it's a string, and then I concatenate with manager gnome quote. I fix it to 2 decimal points again, so with the $sign and the 2 decimal points, it'll look like a proper money. Then for the total cost, I go ahead and I create a new variable. This makes it easier to, in the final line, do as we did before, just a money sign, a variable with 2 fixed 2 decimal places. So that's all for the on your own portion of this challenge. I hope you did well and good luck to your coding in the future.